President Trump has also talked about stepping up military aid to Ukraine. And we've seen sort of little spurts of US military aid to Ukraine from time to time. And now they're talking about Tomahawk missiles. And Ukraine has been longing for these Tomahawk missiles since Russia started its full-scale invasion in February 2022, and the Biden administration wouldn't provide Tomahawk missiles. Now President Trump is saying maybe he will.
With all the coverage of the war and maybe now, hopefully, peace in Gaza, the conflict in Ukraine has been somewhat pushed out of the news, but things are happening. NATO defence ministers will meet in Brussels today in an effort to drum up more military support for Ukraine, and Volodymyr Zelensky goes back to the White House on Friday. Can he make use of a Donald Trump with peacemaking on his mind? Leigh Turner is a former British ambassador to Ukraine and the author of Lessons in Diplomacy, Politics, Power and Parties. Good morning.
Morning, Kate.
I suppose given that we haven't spoken about Ukraine as much as we have in the past, we should start by just setting out where things stand currently in the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Yes, the war is grinding on over there. They've got this huge front line over 1,000 kilometers long, and latest estimates are that round 1,000 Russian troops per week are being killed or seriously injured on that front line, along with hundreds of Ukrainian troops. So it's an extremely intense war which goes on. And we've also been seeing these massive Russian air attacks on civilian infrastructure, in particular energy power stations and so on inside Ukraine, and the Ukrainians responding with long-distance drone attacks. So there's a massive war going on in the east of Europe, Kate, and we shouldn't forget about that.
And is it fair to say that the focus on it has been lost a little bit? Germany's Kiel Institute, which tracks defence and financial support to Kyiv, has said that Western military aid to Ukraine has fallen by 43% in July and August. Is that something we expected to happen, or is that because people have stopped talking about it as much?
I think there is a risk that people stop talking about it. President Putin has been staking his entire future, really, on the belief that Western countries will simply get a bit tired of supporting Ukraine, that Western unity will crack. And that's what makes this coalition of the willing even more important. You may remember that back in February, the world was pretty shocked when Pete Hegseth, the US Defense Secretary, suddenly popped up and said, look, the US is not going to support Ukraine in the way it has been doing up to now. Any future security guarantees must be backed by European and non-European troops. And to be clear, as part of any security guarantee, there will not be US troops in Ukraine. He said, Europe must provide the overwhelming share of future lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukraine. So, yes, there has definitely been a pullback by the US. I think the UK and Germany have continued to provide very significant military and economic and political support to Ukraine. But there is always this risk that the political interest in Ukraine will go off the boil as this war drags on for month after month, for year after year.
And so how hopeful should we be about this meeting between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky? I mean, there's talk of Tomahawk missiles. How likely are we to see that happen?
I'm afraid I'm not a big optimist on Tomahawk missiles. I hope I'm wrong. We've seen this very weird pro-Putin approach by President Trump since he was elected, or since he took power in January. Trump has threatened many times to impose very strong secondary sanctions on Russia if it doesn't halt the war. That is to say, the US would put sanctions on countries that were importing Russian oil to make it much harder for Russia to finance its war against Ukraine. And President Trump has also talked about stepping up military aid to Ukraine. And we've seen sort of little spurts of US military aid to Ukraine from time to time. And now they're talking about Tomahawk missiles. And Ukraine has been longing for these Tomahawk missiles since Russia started its full-scale invasion in February 2022, and the Biden administration wouldn't provide Tomahawk missiles. Now President Trump is saying maybe he will, but if he were to do that, that would be a really big statement by the US that it is going to put pressure on Russia. And up to now, President Trump has consistently refused to put any real pressure on Putin to bring Putin to the negotiating table. And as a result of that, really, Russia hasn't taken either President Trump or efforts to bring about a peace in Ukraine very seriously.
Well, we will watch what happens at that meeting in the White House on Friday. Leigh Turner, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
He's the former British ambassador to Ukraine.
So, good morning. I really want to welcome Pete Hegseth here to NATO again, to the Defense Ministers meeting. This will be an important meeting because we had a successful summit in The Hague. And there is now much more cash on the table. There is firepower coming out of our defense industry, which is so important. And we are doing everything collectively to keep Ukraine strong. For everything you are doing, Mark.
It's great to see you. Great to see you. Absolutely. Great to be here. And Mark mentioned it. Firepower. That's what is coming. We expect and is coming from NATO. And it was a historic summit just a couple of months ago, brought about by leadership of President Trump to say we need our allies to step up. And they did, and they have in those commitments. Now those commitments will soon translate into capabilities, which is the most important aspect of it. And one part of that, of course, is Pearl, is the initiative where European countries buy U.S. weapons, transfer to NATO for the fight in Ukraine to bring peace to that conflict. And if there's anything we've learned under President Trump, is the active application of peace through strength. Yes. You get peace when you are strong, not when you use strong words or wag your finger. You get it when you have strong and real capabilities that adversaries respect. But also note a historic moment as well for a lot of things to happen, given what the president's been able to do in Gaza and throughout the Middle East. I think the world is seeing that we have a peace president who seeks that peace through standing by those that stand with the United States and stand for peace, which is what we saw there, and I hope we can see in Ukraine.
Thank you so much. See you later today at the pressers.